I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always.
Okay, we're back. It's the Everything Always podcast.
Mike and Summer coming at you, but not live. Live for us, but not for you right now.
It's live right now. It's live right now.
Yes. We've got, well, here's why we've got today's episode, because you guys asked for this topic. And so we're bringing it back. And it's a hard one. It's an intense one, but it's really important. And we know that it's super important to you guys because you keep writing in about this stuff. And it's lots of people writing in about high conflict co-parenting. But along with that is something that we've covered before, which is parental alienation.
Super serious topic.
Yes.
Real deal.
It is a real deal. We know too many people that have gone through this after divorce.
Struggled with it, but have also, found their way back.
Well, some not yet.
Some still trying.
So our guest today that I interview is Susan Shofer, and she's a certified divorce coach, and she has a very strong focus on parental alienation. And we're talking about what it looks like in mild cases, in extreme cases, the damage it has on the children, and really important is what alienated parents can do. And so we're answering the questions of, will it ever stop? Why is it happening? And will my child ever come to the realization that they were alienated against me? That's a big question. So yeah, should I tell them a little bit about Susan?
Yeah, let's talk about Susan.
All right. So Susan, she's extremely wise, and she's actually really funny, although you might not get to hear a ton of that in this interview. But it's because of that wisdom and humor that she has that she was able to climb out of her own longstanding contentious divorce. Along with her personal divorce, her training as a certified divorce coach, her experience in the financial industry, and along with 25 years as a private investigator, yeah, pretty cool, she brings sensible ways to climb out of the frightening and chaotic divorce journey. Those are really great words, I think, to describe divorce. It can be very frightening, it's very chaotic, and all of that leads to a ton of stress. But really why we wanted to have her on the show is because she's had her own personal success in defining parental alienation. She also has a TEDx talk where she talks about this. It's amazing. You have to check it out.
Great thing to link to in the show notes.
It is, and it will be in the show notes. And we'll also talk about that in the interview. And she also does a lot of work with the Parental Alienation Study Group. So she is a primo expert on the subject. And what I really, really love about her is that she truly, truly cares about every person which is a lot of people that she's worked with, that has struggled through this. And she gets it. And you just feel like she's there for you. She brings you really meaningful advice. She's just awesome all over. And I'm actually really, really honored that she came on the show. And I think I will tell you, there were some other interviews that we did before this, but we're putting this one out a little bit earlier, really because she's got some stuff that has just launched this month of March that I think you'll find really valuable.
Really relevant stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the interview, I think we may have skipped this on our last episode. I'm not positive. I apologize about that, but we have a bunch of open letters that have come in, and it's time to read some. So we're going to just read one, and we will continue.
Why don't we talk a little bit about what the open letter is? Because I think still some people don't know what it is.
You're right. So the open letter is a place where you can come to our website, everythingalways.co, and you can write an anonymous letter, meaning you submit a letter into this form and we have no idea who you are, there's no way of knowing who you are. I think the only way, and nobody has done this yet, we will reply back to you to let you know, hey, we're going to read your letter on this episode. Only if you reply will we actually see your email address and who you are. Otherwise, once you send that letter in, we don't know who you are. And the purpose of that is so that you can vent. You can write the letter to that person that you're either angry with or you want to.
Maybe it's just a come clean letter, or you want to like have an opportunity just to express like how you're feeling in a way that you actually know you can't do in real life.
Yeah.
That you wish you could, but circumstances or things don't allow you to.
Yes, exactly. This is, this came out of, I kind of had this idea when I said one day, I was like, oh, it's so therapeutic for me to just write out feelings, write out the things that are,
it's kind of like journaling, but someone's going to read it.
Yeah, but you just feel good knowing that it's getting out there and nobody knows who you are.
Are us.
Yeah. So we're acting as your voice for this. So I don't know. This is, let's see. This is about from a month ago. We've got a lot that we need to catch up on. We might have to start reading too. I don't know, but we'll read this one. Okay. It's so funny because our form automatically says, Dear John Doe. So whenever I go to open the form to read it, it says, Dear John Doe, but that's not how that's not what the person wrote. All right, here we go. I wish you could understand your dad like I do. I wish you knew how hard he fought for you. I've watched him try to get through his day with a pit in his stomach because of the day-to-day turmoil battle with your mom. I wish you could have seen his side while you were being told on the other side how bad he was and how he didn't care about you. He never stopped caring or loving you since the day you were born. I don't even get to see you anymore because you've turned away from the whole family, including me, who you used to call your favorite aunt. I've never felt so frustrated before, to know the truth and to know how stories were spun to make him the bad dad. He wasn't perfect. None of us are, but he didn't deserve this. You don't deserve this. You deserve your dad because he has so much to give you if you were just open to it. I know it all seems to be justified in your mind, your mom's and her family, but I hope that one day, even if it is many years away, you will have your own opinion that is only yours and you will see the truth of situations. One day, I hope you will see how you were persuaded to separate yourself from a family that loves you. You will always defend your mom, and I think it's sweet, but I pray for you, sweet niece of mine, to look within at your own truth. Look at your experiences in the past and see what really happened.
Okay.
So I think, in just reading this letter, and we're going into an episode about parental alienation, it sounds like something like that is happening here. And I'm so sorry for this person who is clearly an aunt of a niece that she loves. And because of this kind of stuff going on, she's not having a relationship with her.
Interesting to think too, because it can actually affect other people than just the parents, right?
Yeah,
parents, uncles, and aunts,
whole families.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking thing.
Thanks for sharing that. That's relevant, I think, to today's show.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, let's dive into the interview.
So let's go.
Hello, Susan, and welcome to the show. I'm so grateful to have you here, and I'm really excited to talk about all of your genius and how you can help a lot of our listeners who are going through a divorce and dealing with the ugly parts of it.
It's a pleasure to join you. It's nice to be with you tonight.
Thank you. So I'd love to start with your journey in doing the work that you do and how you got here.
Well, I was a agency licensed private investigator for a long time. I was primarily involved in corporate investigations, and then I went through my own divorce, which seems like a likely story, but I had no intention to be a divorce coach. And I was also president of Parent Network of Greater Baltimore, and a social worker had seen me do a presentation, and she stopped me afterwards and said, "You would be a great divorce coach." And I told her, "I don't think so." And I walked away from her and I said, "I don't want to be your friend anymore." And then 6 months later, I was with a group of attorneys on the other side of town over near Washington, D.C. And one of the attorneys said, "You've got this whole divorce thing down like a science. You should be a divorce coach." And I thought, wait a minute, two people, different professions on opposite sides of town have said the same thing to me. And that's really how it started. It also began because When I went through my own divorce, which was pretty contentious, very high conflict, in fact, everybody in our city kind of knew this bad divorce. I thought at first that my experience in the courtroom, having been an investigator for a long time, having been a witness and come to court with evidence, been in the hot seat, I thought I really had this in the bag, but I really didn't.
Yeah.
Family law, divorce court is so different. And no matter how bad it was for me, and it got bad, I always, in the back of my mind, I asked the question, what the heck do people do who have no clue on how to navigate around this? Because I found it so frustrating. It was just horrendous. And I actually, right then and there, said, you know what? 2 people said I should be a divorce coach. I'm going to be one. And interesting, I looked for a coach when I was going through my divorce. And that was over 10 years ago. And I couldn't find divorce coaches. There weren't that many at the time. There were life coaches, but they didn't really understand divorce. Divorce coaches, we get it. We get it from soup to nuts. We know the nuances of divorce, from finances, kids, parental alienation, if there is any, how to find the right attorney, how to communicate with an attorney, how to divide up property. We understand it. And so that's an ideal addition to the, to the divorce journey.
You have walked the walk. So one thing that really, intrigued me, and a real big reason that I reached out to you, was you've gone through this yourself, and you also help others, and that is parental alienation. And we have talked about this on our podcast, and I can't tell you how many times it is always the episodes that gets the most listens. It's the one that gets the most people emailing us and asking more about it because of what they're going through. And so I'm like, we have to come back and we have to talk about this. It is so important.
And it, no matter how much, and I tell people all the time, I love my regular divorces, but it seems as though about 95% of my clients are parents who are alienated. This seems to be my thing. It's torture. It's the worst. People ask me, many times they've asked me to tell them the worst story I've ever heard. And when it comes to parental alienation, they're all bad stories. They're
all bad stories for everyone involved.
It breaks my heart. And I every time I get a case, it's like swallowing broken glass, because it's so painful to hear the story. And it's really about what happens to the children.
Yes.
It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
So I'm not sure, are you able to share your experience and how you defied it yourself?
I won't get into a lot of detail, because
which I totally understand and respect.
I don't like to make it about me, but my case was classic. I can tell you it happens very quickly. There are ways to navigate around it. Most alienated parents, including myself, we do what's instinctively normal.
Yeah.
We respond in a way that seems reasonable. But when you're dealing with alienation, just about everything that we do that seems reasonable is not.
Yeah.
There's another way to approach it. And it starts with having an attorney who understands it and gets it and knows how to try these cases. Anything short of that, forget about it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is a lot of attorneys don't actually understand it. So it's a really good find when you have someone who does.
I had a client this morning who I've been working with, and they also have a therapist. And this client has not seen his children. The 2 have aged out and 1 is in the teens. And it's been a 12-year journey, and he's been through 6 attorneys. And there are a handful of attorneys in the United States and Canada and in other places that understand parental alienation. They don't have to use the term in court if the judge doesn't want to hear the term, but they are able to draw up custody agreements so that alienation cannot occur. And if it does, and it's evident, and when the decree or the custody arrangement is drawn up in a way, written in a way that if somebody is alienating, it becomes very evident, and that there's sanctions punishments if somebody alienates the children, because the piece of this is it is not about the he said, she said. And most judges see it that way. They're like, well, he's doing something kind of awful to her, and if she does something back, this will all settle. When the divorce is over and the dust settles. That's not how parental alienation behaves. It gets worse after the divorce. As bad as it is during the divorce, once the watchful eyes of attorneys and custody evaluators and parent coordinators and mediators and judges are no longer in the purview, the alienator has a grand old time. And then it's really tough to fight it. So the divorce decree, and typically the part about child custody, has to be written, as I call it, very densely, so that if there are violations,
right,
they can be stopped very early. Because once the child's alienated and doing the bidding, it's really tough. Their whole narrative is changed. And, they're part and parcel of the smear campaign and the denigration.
Exactly. So let's talk about those things that you just mentioned, the smear campaign, the new narrative that the child has, and how this all happens. Because I think for some people it happens in subtle ways that the alienated parent doesn't even realize it in the beginning until all of a sudden that child is speaking that narrative and I don't want to see you anymore happens.
Well, first of all, how it happens is all the alienator needs is the child. And what I hear typically across the board, parents will say, this is the child who was so close to me. That doesn't mean this child was the favorite child. Healthy parents don't have a favorite child, but children will have a parent that they are close to. Oftentimes when they're very young, they prefer mom or dad. Not that they don't love both parents, but they may be very clingy to mom. Well, the alienator perceives that as, oh, that must be my ex's favorite child. It isn't. That child was just possibly more needy. And that's the one they will go after typically. And before you know it, this child is saying things that are just off the wall. They're accusing the targeted parent of things that have never happened, or they've blown it out of proportion. And I've said on other broadcasts that I've done, I had a case once where the 13-year-old was adamant he never wanted to see the dad. And I happened to get in a conversation with him, and he said, he's dead to me. I can't stand him. He's a terrible father. He's negligent. And I said, oh my gosh, what did he do? And he said, well, when we were in Hawaii, he didn't let me get the lobster for dinner. And
Wow.
And apparently the mom heard that, and this just became part of her arsenal. Your dad doesn't want to feed you. He doesn't love you. This is the way he is. He's stingy. He'd rather buy lobster for his girlfriend. And the laundry list goes on.
Yes.
And what the alienating parent needs to do, if you think about it, children love their parents. Not only do they love them, they trust them. The alienator breaks down the trust and they create fear.
Yes.
And that's what keeps the children from wanting to see the parent. Fear.
That is so true, because with that fear, they can control. So if we have you in a state of fear, then I can then control you, and you're now reliant on me to make you feel better.
Well, and also if a child fears something, they're not going to go. Think about children that don't want to go to school. Why? They're afraid. Think about children, your teenager doesn't want to go to the middle school dance. Why? She's afraid. Maybe the girls will make fun. It's all about fear. So if there's fear instilled into this child, well, then they're not going to go, and they're not going to want to go, and they're going to reject that parent.
Yes. So what is the alienated parent to do? Because you can't be there at that house hearing, what's going on, what they're saying. So there might not be, in the case of there is still shared custody happening, but like you said, the child is saying, I don't want to come to your house. I don't want to see you anymore. What is that parent to do when they can't control what's being said at the other home or by the other parent?
Well, so let me tell you what happens with a healthy scenario, and then we can segue into what they can do. In a healthy scenario, it is not unusual during divorce, and I call these healthy divorces, where parents are co-parenting. And then there's maybe a weekend where maybe the son doesn't want to go to mom's. He has a lot of homework to do. He's exhausted. He had 5 soccer games all week, and he's just like, I don't want to go to mom's. Well, it's the dad's job to do one of two things, to say, let me talk to mom, and maybe they can make some kind of arrangement. Maybe the child will come the next day or the day after. And in collaborative settings, that always works.
Right.
Or the dad says, I hear you, I get it, but it's your week with mom, not mom's week. There's different language. It's your week with mom. So let's get in the car. You can rest in the car. We'll stop and you can get a smoothie, something like that, to encourage that visitation. With alienation, the parent just joins right in. So if the child says, I don't want to go, it's, well, I understand. Look, I didn't want to be married to your dad anyway. I don't blame you for not wanting to be with him. He's so awful. And better yet, because he'd rather be, you don't even have to go because he'd rather be with his girlfriend. He doesn't really love you. In fact, he didn't really want you to be born. And so it gets into this whole narrative. And what I tell parents who are being alienated, and it starts with, you pick up your child every other week. Let's say that's your visitation schedule, and they go with you, and then you go to pick them up, and they don't want to go, but they do. And then next time they are really, really adamant they don't want to go. And then the third time they won't get in the car.
Yeah.
And usually the alienating parent is amazing. They'll come out and say, I don't know why they're like this. I'm not stopping them from going. In fact, I encourage it. An alienator will say that. Why? Because they know darn well that kid is not getting in the car, because the alienating parent has worked that child to the point where there's no way that child's getting in the car, and that parent knows it. So they put on and I've actually had clients where the child is screaming, I don't want to go with dad. I don't want to go with dad. And mom's filming. And she's saying in the background, I don't know why he's like this. I want him to go with you. By the way, any of your listeners have this going on? That is a red flag. That is huge. And unfortunately, a lot of attorneys or judges will say, but look, the mother wants the child to go. The child just doesn't want to go. For those of us who deal with alienation, given some of the other questions we ask, like when did this start? How did this start? Was there anything that precipitated this? And if there isn't, and it started quickly, we know what it is.
Yes, exactly. Well, you were saying earlier, and I thought about this. I know of a situation of someone who has gone through that, of parental alienation, and the narrative, especially with certain stories being told that didn't actually happen or were very twisted, that the child is now telling based on the other parent's story that they've told, which isn't true. And it's amazing how quickly the child will just take that on as truth.
Well, there's been a lot of studies. I'm not a clinician. I don't study this. I read the studies, and I'm part of the Parental Alienation Study Group, which is spearheaded by all the parental alienation experts, and they are clinicians, and they've spent a lot of time not only studying this, but speaking to alienating parents and other clinicians. And it's a complex issue, but for those of us who see it all the time, I just look at it, being a private investigator, I'm like, just the facts, ma'am, just give me the facts, and I can look at the scenario and pretty much sniff it out, see what's going on. And it is so insidious, and children can be malleable. There was a study done in the early 90s. I think it was one of the shows like Prime Time. John Stossel did the piece. And those of us who deal with alienation have seen it several times. And basically the theme was, do children lie? And they took a group of kids, I believe they were around 5-6 years old, and they asked them if they got their hands slapped in a mousetrap. And the kids were like, no, that never happened. But the adults, or the clinician working with the children, said, no, don't you remember? And, after a day, the kid's like, yeah, I do, And then 3 days later, it's like, you want to tell me about the time your fingers got smashed in the mousetrap? And they're like, oh, I was downstairs and before I knew it, and they have an elaborate story. The flip side of that is when these clinicians and these researchers then said to the children, by the way, that never happened. Wow, they held to the story. Children can be coerced. I talk to a lot of alienated adults, they're now adults who are alienated, and they will talk about this one person said it was like part of their brain was taken out and new information was put in, and then the brain was put back into their head.
It's like an actual brainwashing.
It's brainwashing programming. I know that there is not a psychological term called brainwashing, but when I speak to mental health professionals and I say this is like brainwashing, they all say yes. Yes. We know what that means. It's more of a Stockholm syndrome, and if you think about it, because it's not just brainwashing, but it's aligning with the captor. With the person who's, keeping you captive. So, for example, they've studied people who are either in cults or who have been, abducted, and how people, you would think they want to run from the cult or they want to run from their abductors. And while they may get rescued from cult or an abductor, they have really aligned with their captors. And, perfect example, Jim Jones.
Yes.
How many people went to Guyana and, drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak? We have a term called drinking the Kool-Aid because of that. And these weren't stupid people. A lot of these people were mental health professionals. They were physicians, legal professionals who somehow got sucked into this guy's narrative and did just about all his bidding, which was to drink the Kool-Aid and commit suicide.
Right.
So if people will follow somebody like that, a child will surely.
Of course, yeah. It becomes kind of like a codependency type of a relationship.
Well, children are codependent. I mean, they are.
Yes.
Right. That just by nature of the fact that they're minors, they're children, and they are dependent. It is unfortunate, and there's a term, it's called adultification or parentification. And that's basically where the alienating parent is less of a parent and more of a friend. They will overshare with these kids.
Yes.
They will tell them about, I had one client whose ex-wife had an abortion and shared it with their 9-year-old daughter. And you just have to ask yourself why, why that happens. Or another thing they do, which is stunning, is that they will share legal documents with the kids. And I can tell you, having been a private investigator for a long time, anytime I see legal documents, they always lend themselves to interpretation. Why on earth would anybody sit down with divorce decrees or settlement conference information and share motions and share it with kids? Well,
why do they need that stress or need to be any part of that at all? I've never understood that.
They don't. But what happens is the child, of course, does not understand what they're reading, and it comes with a narrative. So let's say it's a mom and she goes, oh, look, this is just another legal document from your dad. And oh, look, he doesn't want to pay child support. He's fighting me again on this issue because, he doesn't want you to eat. He doesn't care if you live or die.
Wow. Yep. And I think that happens a ton. What is the damage that this causes on the effect that it has on the children and as they grow into being adults?
So that's a great question. And that's about an 8-hour conversation.
Oh, I bet. I bet. And I've done research myself, so I know some of it, but some of the key, the point is to I really want people to understand how damaging it is, whether they might not be taking it seriously enough in their own situation, if they are the alienated parent, or if they are the actual alienator. And I don't know how much you can get through to a parent that is doing the alienating. I often wonder, well, don't they love their children? If they know the damage it is causing, then they will make a change. But I don't know necessarily if that's true, but I still think it's important for people to understand that this is It's not just yeah, we just don't get along and it affects the kids. When it gets to this point where you're, getting in between that relationship and actually, constructing this whole narrative of the child, I think it really is damaging, and it seems to damage their self-esteem and the way that they function as adults.
You're 100% correct. And that is what happens. The parent who's alienating, first of all, I'm not a clinician. And people have said to me, well, they're a narcissist, they're a sociopath, they cluster B person. I really don't know. What I can say is any parent who does this is acting out of a place of poor mental health or borderline personality. And I think across the board, all clinicians and people who deal with this could say this with absolute certainty. A parent who does this is not normal in some way mentally. If you ask them if they love their children, they will swear that not only do they love their children, they are protecting their children from the ills of the other parent. And that's their job to, and I've heard them say, I would do anything for my children. And this is why I have to keep them away from the mother. She's so toxic. And the things that she does, she's so terrible. And they're so much better off without her. And so they really believe, they've created a false narrative that they believe that they are doing what's in the best interest of the child. Now, we all know that when there are car chases and they're keeping children out of school and they're blindfolding them and taking them out of the city, come on, we know that that is not normal behavior. And right. I believe and I say I believe, and I say that in quotes, air quotes actually, that who's doing that doesn't, is aware that they are, but I believe their narrative becomes sacred to them, and they believe it too. And if they don't, they want to make sure that everybody around them does. And that becomes another part of the equation, because children who are alienated, they do it very boastfully.
Yes. Publicly on social media to their friends. I have noticed that. Yes.
And I have several clients going through that now, where, one has a daughter who's on Instagram, my dad's dead to me, skull and crossbones, blood dripping, the whole bit. And the dad is an adoring, wonderful dad who's never done anything to her. The mom, well, she's something else. And, children who are really abused, and again, let me preface this with, I'm not a clinician, but everything I've read and learned through this journey and spoken with clinicians who study this, children who are truly abused don't have that affect. In fact, they will protect the parent who's abusing them. If they're questioned about burns or bruises, they will make up unbelievable stories to keep their parents out of trouble. I fell down the stairs and then a shark got me. Alienated kids are very boastful and very verbose about it. I can't stand my mother. She's horrible. Look at the way she dresses. I'm not going to her house. She doesn't clean, and she's a slob. And they have no remorse whatsoever or guilt about saying this about a parent and publicly. Right. And the alienating parent, wow, they take, my analogy to this is a play. And the screenwriter, okay, the playwright is the alienating parent, and the child's the actor. They get the script and then they just do it. And that's the analogy I use so that people understand this. And if the play is bad, who gets blamed? The actor. Because the actor is the one reading the lines. The child is the one reading the lines in this case. And they do it very well.
Have you ever wanted to send an anonymous message or letter to someone? For me, the most powerful therapy has always been to write. If I feel angry, sad, super inspired, or just wanting to feel understood, I write, and often I write letters to someone when those feelings involve a particular person. When it comes to divorce, co-parenting, step-parenting, new relationships, and everything that comes along with blended families, there tends to be a lot we don't say and a lot we wish we we could say. And it feels so good writing a letter as if you were going to send it to that person. It's like this huge pressure off of your chest. It's kind of cathartic. Well, we want to offer you that forum where you can have a voice. Anonymously, of course. If there's something you've always wanted to say to someone, but knew that out of respect or to save drama or because you knew it wouldn't be received well, now is your chance to get it out there and have it be read, because we would like to serve as your voice. So here's what to do. Head over to everythingalways.co/forum. That's FORUM, everythingalways.co/forum, and fill out the form. We won't know who you are, as it will be sent to us totally anonymously. It just hits our inbox, but we have no idea who it's coming from. As they come in, we will be sharing these on the podcast. We'll be able to reply to you. You'll still remain anonymous unless you reply back. And we'll let you know if it will be featured. It's 100% confidential. So what do you say? Ready to get it off your chest? Okay, back to the episode.
So if, as you're saying all this, this little light bulb went off in my head, and I wondered, is parental alienation, is that considered abuse?
To those of us who understand parental alienation, it is.
Yeah.
The American Psychiatric Association and the World Health Organization do not recognize it as a mental illness. That doesn't mean they don't recognize that parental alienation exists, but they don't recognize it as a mental illness. We who are in the business, I don't want to say business, but who understand this, see it as it's definitely abuse.
Yeah. I mean, just hearing, to me, if you are purposely lying or trying to get in the way of something that could otherwise be healthy, I mean, you are damaging the health of the child, the mental health of the child, and you are manipulating, which, all of those things, while it might not be physical, seem to be very emotionally abusive.
It is. And it changes the child's perspective. As I've said, I've talked to adults who have reached out to me who were alienated as children, and they typically say across the board, "Thank you for getting this message out because," and then they share their story with me, and it's not a good one. No. None of them said, "I was alienated, but I'm resilient, I'm cool, it's all good." That doesn't happen. And unfortunately, sometimes the courts or attorneys say, "Look, the kids get older, they can see what's going on, they get it." Actually, they don't. They know what's going on. Every adult who's been alienated who's shared with me. Now, remember, I haven't talked to everybody that this has happened to, but I've talked to enough throughout the country, throughout the world. So it's pretty random. And they have said, "I knew what was going on at the time, but what could I do about it? I didn't want to get my mom or my dad, whoever was alienating, mad." Remember, they are front row and center to what's going on. They hear conversations that the targeted parent doesn't hear. They overhear conversations that the parent that they're with tell friends and family, teachers, coaches, therapists. They hear it. And so they're in the front row. And they realize that there may be a price to pay, whether it's emotional, a withdrawal of love from that parent, or even threats. When I say threat, it's not like, if you see your dad, I'm going to kill you, but it may be, well, if you go to your dad's, you got to leave the cell phone behind because you're not taking it with you. Or, I bought that computer, you're not taking it to your dad's. I mean, that's pretty crazy, Yeah. And I mean, I had a case once where the father didn't want the child to wear any clothes that he purchased for the child at the mother's. So when the mother picked the child up on Fridays on her time, she had to take the child to the dad's house so the child could change out of their clothes and put on something the mother brought him.
I've heard these situations. Yep.
And any therapist or attorney who wants to tell me there's not alienation or that's not bizarre or that's not damaging, then I have to question them, because there's nothing even remotely normal about that. And what that also does is that the weeks that child had to go with mom, that whole day in school on Friday was just the anticipation of having to get picked up, taken over to dad's. And dad was sometimes saying, like, really, your mom's outside, you're going with her, she's such a, whatever, ever. The child has to change their clothes, and
wow.
Who does that?
And that's just making the child suffer and feel more insecure about their whole situation. That's horrible.
And I've had the number one thing that I've heard adults tell me is, I have a fear of being alone, and I've always felt alone.
Yeah.
And even though the alienating parent is always by this kid's side, or children, sometimes they alienate more than one. And believe me, they insert themselves, the alienator inserts themselves into the child's life to the point the child has no other life. They will, keep them away from extended family members on the targeted parent side, which, by the way, the child just doesn't lose mom or dad, loses grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings,
Right.
all on that side. So I get calls from grandparents who say, it kills me to see what's happening to my daughter and my son, but I don't see my grandkids.
Well, and like you said, it's almost like this, war of two different sides, because, the alienator will get the whole that side of the family, his or her side of the family on board. So now that the child has this whole narrative coming from this whole family, my grandparents that love me, my aunt that loves me, my uncle that loves me. So it must be true about, my other parent. It must be true what they're saying, because they all think this. So it's
identity. It's also, I talked to a child who was alienated, and the mother's family was Italian and the father's family was Irish. And it was the alienator. And the child's like, I'm Italian, 100% Italian. And I said, well, your dad's Irish. He goes, no, I'm Italian.
Oh, wow.
So what happens, the parent is, the mom wanted to erase the husband from her life. Okay, she did. They got divorced. But she also wants to erase this parent from her son. So much so that this language takes away what this child is. Child's half Italian and half Irish. All of a sudden, he's 100% Italian. She has stripped him of a whole heritage without recognizing what she's done.
Exactly. It's funny. My kids are Irish and Italian. That's funny.
Well, so oh, really? They're not just Irish, or they're just
She's not talking about me. That's funny. So I have a question for you, because I haven't seen this happen myself. Actually, I've heard of people who've recognized certain patterns where they've said, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to become that. But they weren't typical alienator, because to me, I think if you're recognizing that and you want to change it, that's awesome. But have you ever seen an alienator that has turned things around and realized the damage that they've caused?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I thought, I don't want to ask, because I just want to see if there's a no.
Well, there is hope. There is something called mild alienation. My clients I don't see it with them. Usually with mild alienation, a parent is not really aware they're doing it. And that may be something like, Mom, Dad's late today. And Mom goes, well, that's your dad, late for everything. He'd be late for his own funeral. This is why I'm not with him. He's just late. Okay.
Right.
And so the mom has an opportunity to kind of throw in the barbs, and, it just takes a little chip away from that child's trust in the dad. Or she may say, well, why he's late? He's probably with his girlfriend, probably, seeing each other kissy before he comes and gets you. He likes her a lot better than you. But the child's still seeing that parent. Typically in the mild cases, if you sit down with that parent and say, you know what, you may want to cut that out, because here's why. Typically they'll stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I probably shouldn't say that. And I've had people say that to me. I go, look, if you want to say that, go upstairs, go in your bedroom, shut the door, put the pillow over your face and say anything you want. Or wait till that kid leaves, call your best friend and go, you're not going to believe who was late again. That's all okay. But for the kid, you just say, Dad, I'll be here soon. Now, if it's a case where everybody always knows Dad's late and he makes his own jokes about it, and Mom's saying it like, well, your dad says he's always late, you've heard of it, then that's not alienation. That's sort of like, that's how he's always been. And that's not an alienating parent. But if somebody's really throwing these barbs, they will stop it if they understand the damage. You start getting into mild and especially severe, no.
Yeah.
And what they will say is, and I've talked to alienating parents sometimes, not that much, but they'll say, well, he doesn't deserve to be around the kids. He's terrible. And I'm like, well, have you made that decision?
Yeah. And often it'll be things like, well, like you said before, well, it's because he's late, or he's, he should be paying me more child support, or he's got, it's often things that are not a case of actual, I'm protecting you. Like if there's actual abuse happening.
It's really interesting. I've had cases, regular divorce cases, where there is abuse and the other parent wants everything or tries to do everything they can to make sure that child has a relationship with the parent, which is why they work to get the parent therapy. I've had, and several times I've had, clients call me, or prospective clients call me, and they say, my husband's in jail, nothing with the kids. He was caught with, narcotics or something. He's a great dad. Susan, tell me how, or should I take the children to see him in jail? I want them to have a relationship with their dad. And I applaud the parent who does that. And I say, it will not damage your child to explain the circumstances, and you support this dad and you take the children to see him in prison. What will be worse is if you don't. And I applaud those parents. So when there's situations like that and parents still want their children to have a relationship with their dad, any of the other nonsense that the other parent drums up, well, he was so abusive to my daughter, like she failed his test and he called her, the B word. And I'm like, okay, you know what, that's not okay, but that doesn't give you the right to keep the child away from him. You call him and say, listen, kind of curtail your language when you're around the kids. That's all that has to happen. But what typically happens with parental alienation, the alienating parent decides, they become the decider, that however the other parents the children is not to their standard. They become the decider and the gatekeeper.
It's such a control thing is what it really sounds like. And like you said, I can see how the alienator would have those, mental health issues, because it makes sense. If a healthy person would not do that.
No, they don't. And I've had situations, most of my alienating clients are post-divorce. And if I have somebody call me and they say, my ex is alienating me from my kids, everything was great, my first question is, are you dating somebody now? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? Well, it's a pattern. And I have somebody now who's been divorced 3 years. She just started dating somebody about 2 months ago. When the dad has the kids who are 7 and 9, he drives by her house and has them peek in the garage to see if the boyfriend's car is in there. And
oh, wow.
And has told the children that she likes the boyfriend more than she likes the kids. Now the kids don't want to come home and spend their week with her. Now, these kids would never even know she has a boyfriend. He has not stayed at her house. His car has never been in her garage. She's in the very early part of dating, and she hasn't even decided if or when she wants to introduce the children to the man. But the dad already has a story.
That is so sad.
And she has a right to date.
Of course she does.
And that brings, so why do they do that? Number one is control, but number two is, even though you're divorced, some people still have not let go. Doesn't mean he wants her back. Doesn't mean he still loves her. Doesn't mean, in fact, he's remarried. Go figure that. But he still doesn't want to let her move on with her life.
Yeah, that's the control thing. Let me ask you, how often, or, if ever, you kind of started to touch on it earlier, but when these children do become adults, how likely is that they actually see what was happening? Is it likely at all?
It is. They usually do. They describe their experience in so many different ways. I hear them say, I had one life, now I have another. They are really brokenhearted about being an accomplice to the other parent.
Wow.
One would think they have an aha moment and they go, oh my gosh, I was so terrible to my mom. I'm going to call her and apologize. That doesn't happen. The pain and agony that they have knowing what they've done is really hard. In fact, I had a client not too long ago where she is now, well, she's not actually a client, but she reached out because she saw my TED and my TEDx talk, and she said, oh my God, I got to tell you this. I have to tell you this. And I said, what is it? She said, when she was young, her mom got a boyfriend after the divorce, and her dad was supposed to pick she and her brother up on Sundays for a week, for his week. And the mom decided, no, you're not going with them. And when he came to knock at the door, the boyfriend and the mom and the brother, they all hid behind the sofa and laughed.
Oh my gosh.
Rang the doorbell. But what she told me is that after he left, this girl said she went upstairs in her bedroom and she cried.
Wow.
And she said for 3 years, this happened. She never saw her dad. Mom didn't let her go. Boyfriend, the mom. And then the boyfriend became the mom's new husband, laughing, having a good time. And then the dad gave up. And we could all say rightly so. I mean, he's doing this for 3 years. She said that was the worst day of her life. She said, because despite all of this, she knew how wrong that was. And she said the next week when he didn't show up, she's like, Dad's really gone now.
Wow.
So they do know. They do know. And here's what's really sad for anybody who's listening, who's considered doing this. The stories that really break my heart is when a child is now an adult, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. I talked to a woman, 66, for God's sake, who was an alienated and rekindled with her mother when she was 38.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how long. After bad relationships, drug abuse, you name it, she went through it. Yeah. But is when they go back to apologize and the parents has passed away.
Oh.
Okay, that is a stain in their life for the rest of their life, and they can only thank the alienator for that one.
Yeah. What they miss out on in their one life here, and being able to have two parents, right, at all, and to not be able to experience that relationship. I would imagine myself, if that were to happen to me, how unfair, once I'd have that realization, how unfair I would feel, so robbed of what could have been. And that's what I think about so often, is that, these kids think they're missing out on, they have the narrative of, I'm missing out on this, on having a great dad, or I'm missing out on having a great mom, but they're not. Somebody's making it that way because that person exists and that person wants to be there, but they're not allowing it because it's not what they think it should be, or they don't perform as a human the way they want them to be. So they're going to just take away the most precious thing.
Right.
And
exactly. It's more about, the other parent has such venom and anger.
Yeah.
Against the other parent that they'll do anything. And I've sometimes heard parents where they'll take the kid on a drive, and I call it the injected venom drive. I coined that term. There's my claim to fame. Where they'll take the child in a car and drive them around on a Sunday and just spew venom about the other parent, so that they are assured that child, and they will do it when they hear the child saying things like, I haven't seen Dad, I wonder if he's okay. Boom. Next day, there's the injected venom drive. Kind of clean
Yes.
that, kind of get them going and back on track for the alienation.
Gosh, that is so true. And I've seen that where it's like, oh, there's hope. These, the parent and the child are talking again, or they had a great dinner together, or something happened. And it's interesting how days later or within days, all of a sudden something happened. And that's the venom drop, right? The something happened to go,
injected venom drive. Yeah.
That is so true. It's like there's a threat to, oh no, you're going to get too close or something's going to happen.
And here's what happens. The alienated parent is like, what happened? I was with my son. He came to my house for the weekend. We had a great weekend. Before he left, he was like, Mom, I love you. I'll see you next weekend. And then in the middle of the week, I call him. I want to find out how he did on his math test. And he's like, I can't talk to you. I hate you. You're dead to me. And the mom's like, wait. What happened in 3 days? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The injected venom drive. It's just,
my gosh, it's so true. And it's so heartbreaking because I know parents. I know a parent who, I think it was 7 years before seeing her child. And finally the child became an adult, young adult, and they have reunited, but which is wonderful. And I haven't seen that happen a ton, but I know I've seen the pain and the tears and the ups and downs. And it's so heartbreaking because these people are such good people and parents and are doing their best and don't know what to do. Do I keep trying, or am I being annoying if I call every day, if I reach out too much, if I, it's like walking on eggshells because you don't know what to do because you have this other side that you don't have control over working against you. And I can't, I've seen it and I can't imagine that myself.
Well, and because it is unimaginable. But here's what I tell parents. And look, anybody who's listening, please reach out to me. Go on my Instagram, go on my website, Twitter, whatever. Don't let it go on a long time because it gets entrenched. This is not something you can put a Band-Aid on and go, it'll be okay. It does get worse. There are ways to navigate around it. More importantly, there's ways to change your behavior, not because you're any part of that. When I say you, I don't mean you, I mean to your audience, right? Anybody who's experiencing it. There are things that you can do that can really help you reach out to your child. And in fact, I'm starting every other month. I do a Burst the Alienators Power Bubble. I do a 4-week, 90-minute Zoom, 4 weeks in a row with people who sign up, and somebody can go on my site if they want to, or reach out to me, DM me. We start again for March, and then we don't do it again until May. And we talk about what's happening to you as the parent who's going through alienation, because it's not in your mind. You're not crazy. What's happening is happening. We talk about ways to navigate around it, the understanding that the other parent is not going to stop. Many of my clients always say, well, if they, no, it's not going to work that way. We talk about dealing with mental health professionals, why most of them get it wrong. We talk about letter writing to your children. I know people who've written letters, they write them incorrectly at no fault of their own. There's a way to reach out to children. And also we talk about reaching out and getting the right legal representation, because that's really key.
Gosh, that is so awesome, all of this. And I want to make sure that everybody knows where to find all of this information. So on all of the social channels, you are Susan Shofer, and that's SUSANSHOFER. We will, of course, as always, have all of the links in our show notes, but it's susanshofer.com. Well done with your branding, by the way. It's the easiest way to find you, Susan Shofer everywhere.
Right. And I'm on Clubhouse too. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm in the divorce club.
So, oh my gosh, awesome. I love Clubhouse. It was super. I mean, I've just gotten into it like in the last few weeks. It's so great. But you are everywhere. You have a TED Talk. You can find her. Just search for Susan Shofer. This is amazing. Your and when does this begin? This begins on March 3rd.
Wednesday the 3rd. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And And I know this is kind of strategically placed, and
Yeah.
plan it this way, but I do it every other month. And for those people who really want to understand it, and then I provide resources. We also have a Facebook group. It's private, closed. So if they want to communicate with other people who are going through the same thing, I keep them small groups. It's not like you jump on a Zoom and there's tons of people, but it really gives people an insight what's going on. Because here's the other piece of it. Not only, parents who are alienated are very isolated. It's very hard to talk to somebody and say, by the way, I was at the Whole Foods today. Oh, and my kids hate me and they don't want to be with me. That's just not a topic. People will talk about drug abuse and substance abuse more openly than they'll talk about being alienated.
Absolutely.
Because no matter how you couch it, the person listening, somewhere in their brain, they think, I hear what they're saying, but they must have done something wrong. Their kids wouldn't hate them unless they've done something wrong. So alienated parents walk around with this armband of, I'm alienated, but I had to have done something wrong.
Right.
That's what I talk about the first day. Our first meeting is, no, it doesn't work that way. You could cure cancer tomorrow. These kids, nah. They're brainwashed and they're in the alienators camp. It doesn't matter what you do. We talk about, there's things you can do, but you cannot take the blame. You didn't do anything.
Right. Oh my gosh.
There's one kid said, well, my mom yelled. Hey guys, in Canada and North America, who hasn't raised their voice to their kids? Anybody tells me they haven't, come on. Yeah. I remember picking my kids up from school, and I would see one time I saw one of the best moms in town. She had a van full of 6 boys, carpool, and they were acting up, and I saw lacrosse sticks and things flying around. She pulled over the side of the road. She opened the side of the door and screamed, yeah, bad haircut. Nobody called her a bad mother.
If you haven't done that or you haven't lost your patience, you're not normal.
So correct. Absolutely. And so this isn't about an occasional losing your patience, or this is really a denigration and a smear campaign.
Absolutely. And I'm just so grateful that we got to really go into it deeply today. And not only are you an amazing resource and help for people that are going through parental alienation, but also listeners, if you head to her site, susanshofer.com, you will see there are so many ways that you can work with Susan or take advantage of her courses and expertise in all areas of divorce. So I highly recommend it. And you know what? I know it was a serious topic today, but I also know that you're super funny and you're really lighthearted in some of these, really difficult conversations. But I appreciate so much everything that you shared today. And I think there's so many people, if anything, that are listening that are feeling understood. And I think that's so important.
That's really big. And again, like you said, I am a divorce coach, and when I coach just regular divorces, that's like, you're right. It seems lighter and it is, because out of everything that happens in divorce, this is the most tragic piece. And I just want to kind of leave on this note. An alienator knows that this is where they can hurt you. You don't care about the couch. You don't care about the house. If they want the car that badly, let them take it. Yeah, but this is where they can get you. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love, and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.